in my role, like I said, in the administrative side, obviously we want to make it as easy as possible for you to accomplish these tasks of merging. We want to support lodges in any way that we can. On the executive side, y'all need to go ask all these rotating trustees that become Grand Master eventually, and the guys that are aspiring to that position, is what are your plans to perhaps hold lodges some sort of minimum performance standard? What do you plan to do with lodges that can't meet that standard?
Hello, friends and brothers. This is Justin Jones with Masonic Improvement. I am joined here today with my newest Padawan, Dennis Yates.
My God, Justin.
Very close.
I'm going to let
Jar Jar Binks.
I was going to say, I might take offense to that if I really understood the reference, but we're in different age groups. He's a millennial and I'm an Xer, so yeah, I said it. I put it out there. No, I like Jar Jar. He was
I bet you do like Jar Jar.
Brothers,
you relate to him a lot.
Friends, brothers. This is an exciting time for Freemasonry and a very exciting time for Justin and I. I'm going to steal this from Justin and say we have the grandest secretary around and the grand secretary of Texas, but he is definitely the grandest secretary in the U.S. in our book. Brother Justin Duty, or that's right, worshipful. Justin Duty. I apologize for right worshipful, sir. I can't even see it.
Off to a rough start, Dennis.
Thank
I know
you.
it.
I'm sure I'm good for it.
Well, we're very glad to have you. I'm sure as the Grand Secretary, you might have a few busy times here and there. So definitely appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to talk with us.
Yeah, there's about 2 weeks in the summer when we've completed everything from the previous session before we get ready for next year's session, and we're there. So I have a couple of weeks.
Okay, we timed it well.
Wow.
Well, tell us a little bit, if just to get the ball rolling, about your Masonic journey so far. What got you into the fraternity?
So I'm a legacy member for sure. Grandfather and father were both members. Got additional relatives going back past my grandfather, but I had a close relationship with my grandfather, and he's the one that actually got me in to the fraternity. My first Masonic event I think I ever went to was his golden trowel ceremony, and I didn't think anything of it. It was some sort of event. We were told to be there. I showed up, and then when I turned 21, we had a little family function, and I asked him the question, not really knowing what I was asking. I just said, "Hey, what's the deal with that belt buckle that you wear?" And he said, "Oh, I'll take care of that. Don't worry." And he was there the next day with the petition, and it took me a couple of weeks to get it back to him. But he was very much of the generation where they were not going to tell me anything about it. They were never going to ask, but I happened to ask the right question, obviously, and I was glad I did. Didn't really know what I was getting into, I guess, when I asked the question, but enough to have him conferred all my degrees, and my dad was there to help as well, and it was a kind of a nice thing to have 3 generations there. But I put a lodge outside of Waco. I was living in Waco at the time, and my grandfather lived in Lorena, and that was the lodge he belonged to for 30 or 40 years at that point, and petitioned out there. So I was commuting from Waco to go to the lodge. That was back in 2004. So I've been a member or a Mason, was it almost 18 years, I guess, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I now live in Lorena, and that was really the reason I selected this community to live in. My dad had grown up here and left to go to the city, got out of the farm, and got one of the city life, and we grew up in the suburbs. And the fact I belonged to the lodge, and I just knew that's what got me connected to the community. And when I decided it was time to move away from the bachelor pad to the country to start a family, that's the community I selected, was just where the lodge was, just because I knew the people.
I like that lodge in Lorena. They're a good group of brothers.
Yeah, we're real active. We've had a real good, like I said, I've been there almost 20 years. We've got a real strong group of officers coming up, and in the past, haven't had to repeat anybody. When I started, I was senior steward. I got asked to be junior steward, and then we had a guy who had to drop out because he was moving out of town, so I was able to get a promotion almost instantaneously. So I only did 1 year of service in the kitchen. I was happy for it. Worked my way up through, and our lodge got out of the habit of starting the new officers at the steward position, but is now starting that again. We just met last Tuesday and elected new officers. And
let me ask you this. Now, you said that you really didn't have any expectations. You were just joining because you were a legacy member. But when you realized that there was ritual involved and things of that nature, from what you had heard with TV, and of course, that was right in the time of the Dan Brown
National Treasure, baby,
and all that. Yeah. So did it meet your expectations in that regard, or did you put the two together by the time you went through the degrees, or?
So when I say expectations, I really had no expectations, because I didn't do, I never read the Dan Brown books at that point. Wasn't familiar with the movies. I had some guys that came in shortly after me that was what drove them to ask that question, was the movie and and the treasure, and not the fact that I'm going to join some organization and become wealthy beyond my wildest dreams, but it sparked that initial interest, which got them to ask the question. But I didn't go and try to research anything before I joined, truthfully. And I've carried that on to every other appended body or organization I've been joined or invited to join. Mm-hmm. I try to go into it totally blind, not knowing. And I've talked to guys who have come into it reading stuff on the internet, and so they have a general idea of kind of what's coming. I really didn't have any expectations. I think after being a member for a while, and you go back and analyze it, we get to that old stage where you have wisdom. I'm 40 now, or I'm going to be 40, so I'm old now and I have wisdom, or at least I'm going to have wisdom. I hope I do. You go back and think about it, and I think really what happened was I was obviously a legacy member. Dad was never an active Mason. He never went to lodge, but he was a dues-paying member. Certainly paid his dues every year, supported any time they needed something donated. He was there to help, and so was always an active member that way. My grandfather was totally opposite, extremely active, served as master, district deputy, was the chaplain the whole time we were going through the chairs together in the lodge. He was always the kind of the perennial chaplain. But when later in life you realized that what it was, I was attracted to the organization because it was the values of these men that I saw that belonged to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I thought about it later in life, and I went, well, that's kind of, I wanted to belong to something. And I saw these guys that I respected, including my grandfather and father. And I said, well, if it worked out, it was good enough for them, maybe it'll work out for me. And as you join and as you get further into the fraternity, you see more and more people, and there's people that you have just the utmost respect for, and I would have never met had it not been for the fraternity. Yeah. And so, like I said, no expectations going into it, but when you look back on it, I think that's probably what subconsciously attracted me to it, was the values that I saw in these other guys.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah, it was very similar for me. I also didn't really look into it. However, my dad and my granddad were both Masons. And so I grew up thinking the world of both my dad and my granddad. And I didn't really know anyone that was a Mason, or rather, let me back up. I didn't realize some of the people that I knew were Masons, but they were all great people. They're all great guys. So yeah, exact same situation.
Yeah, I'm still amazed. I think about it the night of my EA degree. I get there and I'm nervous, obviously. You know, certainly got people telling me about the goat and about this, about that. Didn't really know, like I said, didn't know what to expect, partially because I didn't know and didn't do any research, and partially because of that. I said, my God, I can't ride a goat. I can't do that. But when I got to my degree, I was just amazed. I went, Doug, what are you doing here? Oh, your pop called me. He said I needed to be here tonight. This is a guy that I'd known for years as a kid. He was a salesman that always called on us at the restaurant. Mm-hmm. And I just knew him, and two other guys that I saw almost weekly that Dad did business with. So there was all these guys that I had dealt with and you know, I obviously respected them. Had no idea they were Masons till that night when they showed up. So that still kind of gets me goosebumps even thinking about it.
Yeah.
In a way, I can relate a little bit as well. My dad wasn't a Mason, and so it's the same scenario where my grandfather was, and my dad wasn't a Mason. So I didn't have that active person directly in my life. I mean, your grandfather was an active part of your life. I know that, and he was a real influencer in your life. My grandfather wasn't. He was gone all the time. But what was cool is that I heard the stories about how he worked on the Alaskan pipeline and he traveled the world, and he was, knew all these people and was a square dancer from hell. And I mean, he could shake it down with the ladies up until he was 80 years old. He was a square dancer and a bowler. But the thing that stuck with me is that my parents, in the times when they had troubles when I was a kid, my grandfather would fly in and fix the problem and go away. They didn't have the greatest relationship, but my grandfather took the time to come in, he'd fix the problem, and get out of their hair. And that just stuck with me, that, he was the kind of man that, he didn't hover over everybody, but when it came time, he did what nobody else could or would do. Mm-hmm. And they said that, he was always the type of guy that he could walk into any bank and, just get a loan on his good name. And because he was a Mason and all this other kind of stuff. And I just wanted to be respected like that. I wanted to be that guy that people cared about enough and thought enough of, that wherever you go, your handshake is the bond, your word is good, whatever you need, I know that I'm going to get it later. So, you don't need a wallet where we are, and I've had that happen. And it's just the very most cool feeling I've ever had in my life, that, I'm around my brothers and I didn't even realize I needed money for whatever event or whatever. And somebody said, go on, man. You're good. You just, in fact, I had that happen the first time I went in the Grand Lodge. I didn't have the cash. I'm thinking, well, I don't carry cash. And one of the old timers go, there you go, son. You just find me later. and took care of it. And that, that was just the coolest thing, that's, and I still love that about this fraternity. And I try to treat anybody like that comes across my path that just might not be, anticipating the cost or whatever. And if they're just happen to be in need, I make sure and fill it. If there's a need, I fill it immediately. And I don't even ask questions. I just want to take care of my brother. And that's, shut up, Justin.
I haven't said a word.
Don't make offers to El Paso.
Justin, let's talk a little bit about strengths and weaknesses. Understanding that you're in a position where maybe you can't be as forthcoming as you might like, but Let's talk a little bit about the strengths and weaknesses of Freemasonry in Texas.
Sure, he can. That's his strength.
We have no weaknesses. Next question. You know, there was the day posed about, are we going to have Grand Lodges in the future? And I've had to delete several attempted posts before I was able to finish it. Because in my role now, obviously, I have to. I'm in an administrative role function. The trustees who rotate up the line are in the executive role, obviously, or aspiring to be in the executive role. So my job is to perform the daily functions of Grand Lodge, to execute what they'd like to do. There's some things I can do the way I think they should be done. But that is the primary role of the Grand Secretary, to be basically the chief operating officer of the corporation, which is the Grand Lodge of Texas. Strengths as far as Masonry in Texas, I mean, we are still one of the largest jurisdictions in the entire state. That might be a weakness as well. Maybe we're a little overloaded in some areas. We have one of the most magnificent buildings that exists in really anywhere in the country or the world. We're blessed to still have it. There are a lot of jurisdictions who years ago had to liquidate or sell or move out of their buildings because they couldn't afford to operate them anymore. So we're lucky in the fact that we have this unique building in Waco, which is the headquarters for Masonry in Texas, that has a lovely museum and this wonderful auditorium that we're able to use once a year for Grand Lodge and then other times of the year for other events. Weaknesses, Texas, like many of the other jurisdictions, after really before the First World War, began this growth, this huge explosion of growth, which kind of peaked in the 60s. So we have this system that we've developed that was designed to fulfill the needs of 250,000 members. And basically we have the same machine now. We have the same Grand Lodge structure, basically. We have the same number of appendant bodies, if not more, that have come in since then. But we have a third, the members, that are trying to keep all of these organizations operating. Consequently, in the 60s, you would not have, it's very common now to see a guy who's going through the line and the chapter and the council and the lodge and the commandery and is active in the shrine. We have them down here in Waco. I know they have them in the Metroplex and all over. That would never back in the 60s and back prior to that, because there were so many members. You had, you go to a lodge meeting and there's 40, 50 guys there. If you wanted to get involved and get in the line, there might be a wait. So maybe you went to the chapter and council and you got active there, and maybe wanted to serve in a leadership role, but it was active, busy there. So maybe you went to the commandery. If that didn't work, you went to the shrine. There were so many other places where you could go plug yourself in. So we have the same these bodies that we're trying to keep going with a third of the members. So I really do think that is a weakness, and that's something that has to be addressed at some point, because you get burnout. I mean, I've experienced it.
Yeah.
Anybody at an active level in their lodge or is active in their lodge and other appendant bodies is experienced burnout to some extent. And that's something that, do you experience burnout and then you make some changes and continue, or do you experience it and then you just decide that, maybe I'll devote my time to the church or the Rotary or whatever it is, and just they walk away and leave. We have to do something to address that. We have too many lodges in the state. Yeah. Also, we did the system to service these 250,000 members that were dispersed all over the state. We have 780-ish lodges as of today, down from 900 to 1,000 back in the heyday. We have lodges that are. I have 2 country lodges which I belong to, which have always had 50 members. That's what they've had since they were chartered in the late 1800s. They've always had about 50 members. They were able to survive that first 100 years or first 75 years because dues were the equivalent of $1,000 or $1,500 in today's money. They were paying significant, but they were able to survive with 50 members. Same thing now. We have 50 members at my lodge in Moody. Many of those members are plurals from other lodges. I belong to 2 lodges, which are being kept alive basically by plural memberships from other stronger, more active lodges. And if not for those guys coming over and helping, then that lodge would be in a whole different position today. So we're a little heavy on the lodges.
Yeah.
Bad thing when lodges go away. We deal with mergers, obviously, in our office and consolidations and things of that nature. And there's a process you have to follow to accomplish that. And at the core, when you have the initial conversation, most lodges don't want to go away.
No, they don't.
There's three guys there. It's their lodge. It was their grandfather's lodge. It may have been their great grandfather's lodge. So they don't want.
If you're just putting in enough work to keep your charter just for the sake of having your charter, what are you accomplishing?
Yeah, so we're fighting. We're fighting emotions when it comes to lodges. Processed more mergers, I think, probably in the last couple of years than we have in a long time. That's not a function of anything that any one person has done. It's just something I think that we need to be prepared to do, and it shouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be. It should be something that we should just realize, that it is a necessity at this time, because we do have less people to uphold the infrastructure, whether it be the buildings themselves or the officer lines that we can't fill. That infrastructure is not being supported, and if it can't be supported and you're having to take the same people over and over and over and over again, then at some point you got to just call it a day and find a strong lodge and support them and support yourself better, in my opinion.
Yeah. And so in my role, like I said, in the administrative side, obviously we want to make it as easy as possible for you to accomplish these tasks of merging. We want to support lodges in any way that we can. On the executive side, y'all need to go ask all these rotating trustees that become Grand Master eventually, and the guys that are aspiring to that position, is what are your plans to perhaps hold lodges some sort of minimum performance standard? What do you plan to do with lodges that can't meet that standard? So that's something on the other side, I think, that has to be addressed, and that's something for those guys that aspire to be Grandmaster. That's something we're going to deal with going forward.
Well, whatever Grandmaster decides to implement something like that would be, I'm just being realistic, I think, would be a very unpopular, like he would go down history as probably a very unpopular Grandmaster, but he would be doing what he had to do.
I have to disagree.
You can set standards. You can hold lodges to a certain minimum performance standard. I would just tell you that I get calls that we run in the office, basically the membership services desk. That's obviously what it is. We get calls from everybody, and when someone says something Grand Lodge did, they usually mean somebody in my office. They may be referring to a district deputy or to another trustee or the Grand Master, but it's always someone in the office typically. The administrative side of it has to be separated from the executive side and the desire to merge lodges. I don't think. Yeah, you're exactly right. Nobody wants to be the Grand Master who shut down 80 lodges.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to think beyond the decisions that these guys make, that we make now. We might never see the results until we're long gone. So that's just one of those leadership things, How do you get that accomplished? Oh yeah, that's very difficult. No one's going to be elected on a platform of I'm going to shut down lodges.
Yeah, you might not run on that. You might bring it up after the fact, maybe.
No, but
I'd like to say two things that I was thinking about while you were talking. Number one, when you were describing the people and the shrinkage and the need of the people and the need of the resources, I'm thinking about an engine on a vehicle. So the Grand Lodge is the motor. It's what's putting out the horsepower, right? And the carburetor is the lodge, and the fuel is the membership. So you have the membership that fuels the lodge, and then the lodge makes the engine work by a combination of fuel and air mixture. So it's got the energy, and it's got the people and the money coming in to make that engine work. Well, so we're getting less fuel right now. We're running into a fuel shortage, but we've got the same size engine down here. And it is possible, if we work smarter, that we can adjust that carburetor and change it out with a fuel efficient carburetor, or create some other system to utilize technology and throw a little bit of make it a hybrid, let's say, to fuel that motor, instead of, by using technology and the resources that we currently have, we can still push that motor with the same amount of horsepower and torque that it's had for years. I think that's part of the equation. And then the other equation is we have to just educate our membership and remind all of our members at every step of the way that it's not Grand Lodge that's making that decision. Ultimately, that decision was made by the membership of their lodge years ago, and all the years up to now, to have them in the situation they're in at this point. Grand Lodge did not make that decision not to raise the dues, and Grand Lodge didn't make that decision not to set the endowments properly. They didn't make the decisions on not doing anything in the community, or not taking care of their building, or not, that's why it's hard for the executive level, because they can't set too many standards, or they're going to have everybody, go up in arms in revolution. But at the same time, how do you tell people, look, guys, you're not meeting the minimum standards you need to live. You need to decide, how you want to go forward, and you're not choosing to do that. So how can we help you? And that's the big issue. I think, in my opinion, that's the big issue we're dealing with. And it's hard to put, it's sad to see that everyone puts it on the Grandmaster. And I've also heard it, I don't want to be the district deputy that loses a lodge during my year. And it's like, well, that lodge has been going down that road way before I was ever even thought of being district deputy. Yeah. I wasn't even a past master when that problem occurred.
There's a lot of zombie lodges, right?
So we're trying to figure.
They're already dead. It's not like you lost a lodge. It was already dead. It's just
right. And we're not trying to downplay the value in grandfather's lodge or what have you. I mean, we all have those same heartstrings. It breaks my heart knowing that Oak Cliff Lodge, doesn't have the membership it used to. But at the same time, it's up to the membership to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Yeah. And I'm not picking on Oak Cliff. I don't even know what their numbers are, guys. I'm just saying. Yeah, I was using that as reference because it was my grandfather's lodge. Too late.
I
already said it.
Damage is done. Anyone for Oak Cliff, message me. I'll send you Dennis's address, and may egg him to your heart's delight.
Yeah, and make sure never to vote for Dennis for the Grand South.
Okay. I do have a follow-up question. You said that, and this kind of piggybacks off what Dennis was saying. You're saying these are issues that need to be addressed, the appendant bodies and the lodge issues, and I don't disagree by any means. And you kind of touched on how they might be addressed through like standards or something such as that. However, I'm just asking for information. Do you not feel as though in many cases this is addressing itself?
Just by the slow decline and the eventual extinction of some of these appendant bodies, or
yeah,
of course,
and lodges too.
Yeah, that's part of it. I think yes. The short answer is this all will work out in the end, one way or the other. I think the problem that I see from a Grand Lodge perspective is the slow dying or unraveling of a lodge doesn't benefit anyone.
No.
And that's the problem you have with trying to convince some of these lodges to merge. Eventually, when the money runs out, the money is out. And I've several lodges that I've been to. I said, you just take your checking account, divide it into, divide what you spend into it monthly into that number, and go find a calendar. Mark that date on the calendar. That's when you're out of money.
Yeah.
And lodges, that's generally when it comes to a head. And it usually revolves around facilities. They're in some old building that has a bunch of deferred maintenance, and they just can't do it anymore.
Mm.
They've passed the hat, but the hat is not going to be deep enough to fix whatever problem they have. And so they decide to sell or the property, or then merge in, or in the worst case, we've had several lodges that had to demise because nobody wanted to inherit their assets and their problems.
I see.
So I think it will slowly take care of itself. But on the Grand Lodge side, I think it is our duty to encourage and make that process easier and explain why it's not a bad thing if your lodge merges.
Yeah,
So-
and do it in a smart manner.
Yeah.
Watching these lodges go away slowly, and that's the thing. If I get a call in the office, say I want to be in Mason in Tarrant County, okay, where about in Tarrant County? Do you work in Tarrant County, or do you just live there?
Mhm.
And then I find a lodge for them. Well, there are whole swaths of the state where I would not feel comfortable sending a guy because that lodge is that is his perception of fraternity, whatever he sees there.
Yeah.
And there are some lodges where I just would not want to send a guy.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Like Goliad. I know what you mean.
oh yeah, Hillsboro.
That's what I was thinking. They create hell spawns out of Hillsboro.
Oh yeah.
Are correct. Slow march of time will take care of a lot of these problems, but we don't do anybody a service by letting it just slowly peter out.
Yeah.
And no one wants to be perceived as the guy that shut down a bunch of lodges.
Yeah.
I think it's a conversation, it's communication, and if you look at the data, obviously in my office we see the information. Our average age is skewing younger,
Mhm.
slow by tenths, by hundredths when you look at it that far out.
But it is.
It is. It's
There is a
skewing
trend.
younger. Exactly. We have younger men that are joining.
Mhm.
We have older members who are passing away. So the age will skew lower. But if you look at the overall breakdown of the membership, our biggest chunk of members are those who are above the age of 70. So, when those guys start going away, that's when some of these conversations are going to become more urgent. The 80-20 rule, 20% of the members show up to the lodge. The 80% you never see, but the lodge is able to function, even very successful lodges that are financially successful. That lodge is still able to function because those 80% are still paying in every year in some manner, whether it's actual dues. So it's not that one day you're going to look around, there are going to be no members there to actually function open lodge. I think you're going to have fewer members on the rolls, period.
Yeah.
So
I do want to say that in my previous question, I was really playing like devil's advocate almost. I think that a slowly dying lodge does more harm for the fraternity than probably a lot of other things out there. If you have someone that's interested in petitioning and it looks gross outside, there's a lodge I went to recently. The last few times that I went there's something dead in the wall, and I point it out every time. I'm that guy because I think it's important you take care of this, but it's still there, and it's like possum size or something. It stinks.
It's got to be if it's been several times, because that usually goes away in a week.
Yeah, it's been so. My point is, like, you can't have lodges doing stuff like that. It's if anyone is thinking about joining, as soon as they walk in and smell a dead possum in the wall, or they go to Grand Lodge and they smell a cooking rat in the kitchen, it's a deal breaker. It's just a deal breaker.
there's something that defines Grand.
Mhm.
It wasn't. Yeah, exactly. You're right. Every year.
Yeah.
That year,
And we're not blaming Robert Marshall.
No. But the second thing I wanted to ask, it sounds like from your comments, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like from your comments that one of the big issues that's contributing to a lot of these lodges having problems is financial. I
don't know if that it's contributing to their problems or it's just a symptom of their overall disease.
Yes.
Is it will all come to a head at some point at these lodges that are underperforming or not performing at all. when the money runs out.
Mhm.
A lodge that has sufficient financial resources, regardless of how effective they are as a lodge, as bringing in new members, as training the members they have, as continuing to put new guys through the line, all that aside, if a lodge has sufficient financial resources, they'll basically be around forever. Even if there's 3 guys there, because they have the resources to do it. When the money runs out, that's when the tough decisions start to have to be made.
Mhm.
There's a like that in the state. That's not the norm, but I can think of several that just as far as just sheer financial will just never go away.
You know what's sad though is that.
The point.
Go ahead, say that again. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It will never go away until the members decide to make that decision.
Right.
And
Right.
I mean, further that, there's a couple in Waco, for example, I can think of right now. To further that thought for a little bit to the next step, those lodges with significant financial resources but are having struggling with membership, or just geographically are in a part of town where there's, you can't fight demographics. I can't fight the fact that this is where folks lived when the lodge was founded, and now they live on the other side of town, and it's just not convenient for them.
Mm-hmm.
But those have significant financial resources can be an asset to another lodge when they merge in. Hillcrest Lodge up the perfect example for that.
That's what I thought of when you said that.
Yeah, the merger of those 2 lodges created a really strong body. They had obviously the positive membership gains and a significant financial resources and a lovely building and the funding to take care of that for many years to come. So that's used as an example to show these other lodges of what it can be like when your lodge merges in. Not to say that every lodge that's broke, is going to have the same results. I think the end result is you have a stronger lodge when you merge in, if you're at a point where you're weak, perhaps.
Well, and that's another thing that I wanted to bring up when you talk about Hillcrest as an example. If lodges would realize, look, if that wouldn't have happened if the other lodge had waited until they were down dead, like a lot of these lodges are doing. So if a lot of these lodges would make the decision now, what happens is it's more of a more of an exponential growth spurt. So you have this influx of members, you have this influx of money, and then with that money, they can make changes and improvements to the Freemasonry and the lodge, and then it gets the excitement going. There was a saying, I can't remember who spoke on it. I think it was Chris Dunham with he's the vice chair of the Zig Ziglar Corporation, or used to be the vice chairman of the corporation, and he was talking on that, and he said, what's the first thing that a new pastor does in any dying church? He goes in and he says, let's build a building. Because as soon as you start fixing up your old building and making it look nice, and you put a playground out there for the kids, people start joining and they get excited, and then the momentum starts flowing. So if we were to take that attitude with lodges that aren't feeling so strong, and make a trust in the name of that old lodge or something, and shift it over to the new lodge or something of that nature, so that that memory of that old lodge is always there as a real contributor to where they are now, then honor them that way. Do something like that. So that was my thought. Justin, do you have anything else? Because I wanted to roll into something else that bouncing off of that topic into another.
Well, yeah, I have something else, but that actually kind of brought me to another topic I want to talk about as well. So
I've been waiting patiently.
Have you?
I have.
Okay. I guess so. I guess I'll permit it.
I tell you what,
I can always edit you later if I need to.
I'll throw the teaser out there, and then you can say what you're going to say, and we'll jump back into it later, because it is an important thing that I really wanted to bring up with everyone here, with our listening audience. And that is such a get excited, Justin. Get your pom-poms out. That is one of the things that excites me the most about you, Justin Duty, not you, Justin Jones, Justin Duty, is that when you came into Grand Lodge, you started overhauling the carburetor, and you started working on ways to effectively manage the resources that we already have in with new technology. And with that technology, it's propelling us so much further advanced than we have been for the last 50 years. In 2 years, we've completed, or we've jumped in the last 5 years further than we have in 50 years in Freemasonry, in Texas Freemasonry. And I'm not going to say it's all because of you, because you have a damn good internet committee there. And so it's collaborative, right? But you go in and you talk weekly with Grandview, and you're utilizing this tool that helps us manage membership, which is the biggest part of any Grand Lodge, is managing the membership. But all these different resources, and it helps the lodges more than they even realize. But I can tell you, we're going to be pushing that going forward. I would like for you to talk a little bit on that, unless Justin wants to stay on the question that he wanted.
Put me on the spot here, man. I do want to address.
That was a big teaser. Go ahead.
I do want to address my question, just because I want to be sure it's covered while we have time, because I want to be respectful of our worshipful's time.
Because my question's a good one. Go ahead.
Okay. If you insist it is. But I don't really know how I want to frame this question, but I visited another lodge somewhat recently, and there was actually several lodges that met in the same building. And the building itself is like a museum / library organization, and the temples, the lodges kind of fall under this umbrella. I was curious if you could explain why lodges would do this and the benefits, and just kind of go into the weeds on that.
That's a good one. Yes.
Opinion.
Library and museum into a lodge. How does that nonprofit help the lodge?
If my friend, Right Worshipful Chris Livingston, were here, he would be giving me a very unique facial expression.
Okay.
But he's not here.
Not here.
Chris, close your ears. Chris, close your ears.
I think we could probably talk about this in general terms. So your lodge can form. You can ask permission of the Grand Master to form a 501c organization for the purpose of exempting your property from ad valorem taxes, which we're now all exempt from. That was put in the statutes. That was prior to the group exemption for ad valorem taxes. It'll also exempt you from, there's some other like improvement district type taxes that some lodges have been subject to. So that certainly exists. You have to basically provide all the formation documents. You send it to me. We send it to the Grand Master. We look it over. We say yes or no. Certainly benefits to it if your lodge is large enough to warrant that. Could your lodge incorporate it as a 501c3 museum with a 4-shelf bookshelf in the corner with some copies of the 1976 proceedings and a couple of flyers? Probably not.
Just kidding.
There are, the lodge building in Hillsborough, for example, has an actual library, is big. The Lee Lockwood building in Waco, obviously it's a totally separate issue because it's owned by the Scottish Rite Foundation of Texas. But there are certain scenarios where that would benefit your lodge, and it's certainly something that currently exists in the statutes. There's a couple of lodges pursuing that now as we speak that have applied to form 501c type organizations.
If we do that, if a lodge does that, does it hurt Grand Lodge as far as the protection that they've given all of us under that umbrella? Does it hurt them by taking that away, or is it just like even Steven? everybody's still doing their own thing. But does that hurt them from the value of the state saying, Grand Lodge and all your subordinate lodges, you're doing good things, instead of versus this one versus that one or whatever?
I hear Chris Livingston in my ear right now.
I know. That's probably a bigger question than you should answer. So I should just retract that.
A competent tax attorney.
Yes.
We advise lodges all the time on that. I would not be able to tell you whether or not it would harm your protections we have now. And obviously, each lodge is exempt from. Each lodge is a 501c under the umbrella of the Grand Lodges. We have the determination letter from the IRS that says we're a charitable organization. Each subordinate lodge has their own employer identification number, which operates under our umbrella. If you want to get really nerdy, if you're a treasurer, you ever apply for a bank account, most of the bank accounts, at least on newer lodges, are styled Ancient Free and Accepted Masons of Texas, DBA, so-and-so lodge, because of the way the letter is worded. But your lodge can certainly set up a 501c type entity if you want to. Like I said, inquire to my office first. We'll check with the Grand Master, and then you can go from that point.
You can tell us. You can speak in general terms, but if we want more specific information as to like tax benefits for the lodge or something, we need to speak with the appropriate committees on that to really get into the weeds.
Yeah, and obviously, my office can answer questions as to how you set these, not as to how you set these things up, but what's in the law, what you can and can't do, whether or not it benefits your lodge is like Dennis was saying. You really have got to go find someone and pay for some advice. And that might be just a member of your lodge who's an attorney.
That's if you're fortunate, yes.
When lodges sell real estate, when you sell real estate, there's a procedure. The Grand Master has to sign off on the deed, as do I. And there's a process you go through. The Civil Law Committee reviews the transaction. They have a special language they put into the deed. A lot of lodges, when they submit their paperwork, think that the Civil Law Committee is going to act on their behalf. And that's really not the case. The Civil Law Committee is there to look after the interests of the Grand Lodge of Texas, not necessarily.
Grand Lodge, yes. Yes.
So, there's nothing wrong with seeking advice and paying for it if you need it.
But now we do have, at least for the time being, we have the real estate committee that does look at the documents of the sale and all that kind of stuff. Fortunately, I had the opportunity to be a part of that this year. It's a really cool group to be a part of, just to help with the process. But we can help the lodges in looking at the fine lines and looking at the documents, because they're contracts, and we can look through them and tell the executive level, we agree with this or we disagree. This needs to be fixed before you send it up the line. Things like that. So that's cool. And of course, that doesn't come to us until after it goes through Justin and all that. But that is a benefit that the Grand Lodge has created for lodges to kind of help this process out a little bit and make it a little bit smoother for everybody.
Yeah, and on the whole, that's been well received this year. And like you said, that new temporary committee is specifically there to fill that gap where the Civil Law Committee couldn't necessarily help you other than just review what you submitted to them. So, like I said, that committee has been well used this year on several of these transactions that we've had to get through. So,
All right, Dennis, I guess I'll allow you to ask your question now. You have 1 minute.
I have 1 minute. I don't have that long to breathe. It takes me longer than that to take a breath to start talking. See? All right. So
I'm just reminded, like my kids sometimes they watch Powerpuff Girls. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I hear it every once in a while. There's a villain on there called Mojo Jojo, and like, he never gets to the point. He just repeats and reiterate what he's trying to say. I don't know why I'm just throwing this out here.
Let me repeat and reiterate. Let me repeat and reiterate this, JJ, that our listeners come to me just as much as they come to you and say, Dennis, y'all are doing a great job. And it is so much more exciting and fun now that you're on the show. No. So here's an exciting thing that like I said before, you started going into Grandview. You've been really tweaking it to benefit the lodges and Grand Lodge to make so many things more efficient. And I'm actually working on the projects I have with the Committee on Masonic Education and Services. I'm trying to work that that verbiage into the presentations I'm giving, and I'm trying to, really bolster the fact that we have these tools available now. So, in a nutshell, kind of let some guys know, if they don't know, where resources can be found and like where to go to sign up for different events like OLT or whatever gala is coming up or what have you. Just give a breakdown on some of the key things that you've really tapped into that's helping, along with the easy PayPal option in the secretary's thing, to where they can link a PayPal account and it automatically does the convenience fees and everything for the lodge. So it's just a easy thing to do. Man, hands down, Justin, you guys are doing great. You and the internet committee are, golly.
Thank you very much.
And I just
you
wish
mean route worship duty. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wish my co-host was as efficient and effective as you are.
This call feels like a performance review. It's going pretty good so far, though. So.
It is. We love you.
I've been self-employed my whole life, so I've never gone through a performance review. So this is unique to me. So
I'm easy.
Yeah, exactly. Every Mason has the ability to create a portal within Grandview, a unique member portal, which gives you access to a minimum set of data, resources, forms, things of that nature you might need in your 10 years of Mason. There are some educational resources on there, not many, but that's a function that I think will be expanded as we go forward. It gives you the ability for your lodge to communicate with you through Grandview. If you receive the Grand Secretary's monthly maintenance package, or you receive posts that we send out, you've obviously got a portal at least set up, or your secretary at a minimum has at least entered your email address in. So, for the active guy, you've got the ability, so obviously for the active guy that's going through the chairs or wants to participate in different Grand Lodge events, through your portal, you can register for events and pay for them. We used that this last year to register folks for the Grandmaster's install gala immediately after Grand Lodge. Mm-hmm. We used it for this conferences this year, which we sold tickets to for the meals. And we're going to use it this coming Grand Lodge session for the incoming banquet as well. So it's obviously
so easy.
Yeah, we started using it a couple years ago for OLT. That was one of the first projects I got involved in prior to my nomination as acting Grand Secretary and an election afterwards. I was asked to kind of develop some sort of online method with which to register for OLT. Prior to that, you had to send in a paper form, and it went into 3 or 4 different spreadsheets. And
oh my goodness,
it was like just terrible. And so within Grandview, we were able to develop this process. So if you need to go to OLT, you can register there. All these other events that we've talked about. On the secretary side, obviously, Grandview is a membership database. The first Grand Lodge database is in the archives below my office, and it's a bunch of note cards. Prior to that, we had ledgers, and they went from ledgers to note cards. Went from note cards to the first iteration of some sort of digital database in the 70s, and then have upgraded.
Little yellow cards, yes.
Exactly. There's huge card files down there with typed out member records going back to the foundation of the Grand Lodge. So we're in a constant kind of state of change. If you look at it over 125, 150 year horizon, what we have today will be totally different 20 years from now. Guarantee it. Oh, hang on.
We need to get Brother Hancock down there. To start scanning those membership cards and making them all digital. Make that his job for the next 15 years.
My phone had an incoming call on what it was. Actually, that's how the first database was constructed. They actually took those cards and manually entered them in. So if you go, if you're a lodge secretary now, or if you have view-only access to the database and you're trying to find records on members from the early 1900s, the middle 1800s, it really just depends on where they were. If they had a note card on them, then that was entered into the database. So a lot of lodges have gone back over the years and entered all their past masters and entered information off of their annual returns. So there's still some gaps in there, no doubt about it. But there's a lot of old data. So those cards still are actually kind of valuable. We did a little midnight tour one evening after some event, and we went down there and were able to find a couple of cards on a couple of different members' grandfathers. And so it's kind of it's a piece of paper, right? But it's a tactile connection to your relative that was a member of the fraternity. So it was a neat thing to see those guys find that. But as a secretary, obviously Grandview fully it's a membership management system. We had several different iterations of databases. We went to Grandview back in 2018. We've had a unique relationship with them. When I got there, that was one of the things I was committed to was fixing any of the deficiencies that we had, and there were a bunch back in that era, and we were able to get all those addressed. And it's a constant process. We're able to tweak things and change them going forward. But the end goal is to make the secretary's job easier. Make your job as secretary easier by the use of this database, which will, basically manage your members, take care of reporting for you, send out news notices, things of that nature.
I love data. It's always been very interesting to me. And so after I had been appointed as district instructor, I logged in to Grandview one evening just to look at my information. And lo and behold, I had all the data on my district. So I was very excited for several days going through all that. So it's definitely a very valuable resource, and there's a lot of information on there. And so hats off to you for putting all the work into it. And I'm sure you've delegated some of that. So hats off to everyone that has had a part in that, because it is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a lot better than where it was when we got there. And like I said, we're constantly making improvements to it. And Grandview itself has become kind of the leader in Masonic centered or focused database services. They've got 30 or 40 jurisdictions now in the United States and overseas. So the more jurisdictions they pick up, the more processes they can implement from there's common processes in all of our jurisdictions. Membership, the way you change and the way you enter them, but there are little differences from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. But with the size now, basically when I call Grandview and say I need this and I describe it to them, they're able to go, oh yeah, that's the Indiana process, and they're able to copy that. So it's been a good relationship.
Cool.
Very nice.
Well, Rushville Duty, we are getting close to the end of this interview. At this point, this is usually when I ask if you have any final thoughts or just anything that you'd like to share and get out there.
No, I appreciate your invitation, obviously. I wish I would have had a better telephone connection or I brought my laptop home from the office. But no, I appreciate it. I've listened to your podcast several times. It's entertaining. It's educational.
Appreciate that.
Abbott and Costello
Wonderful.
and Dennis is great. So
we need to get you. I was going to say we need to get you back up to Hillsborough sometime. Help out with some more of our degrees. That was great when you came and visited.
That was one of my first events I was able to go to when I was appointed. Grandmaster Underwood was going up there. I don't think really even it was a scripted event. Obviously, that was the lodge that sponsored him to go to the home and school, so I had a deep connection for him, and he still has family in that part of the country. So it was that was a neat event to go up there. And I took my chapter and council and commandery degrees in Hillsborough as well.
Oh, okay.
Very cool.
There was a guy down here. His name was E. Dixon Tony, and he's a big York Rite Mason. Yeah, I'm sure you've ran across him. And he was very active up there in Hillsborough. And so when I asked him that question about getting involved in that side of the fraternity, he brought me up there to Hillsborough. So been in the building many times, been to several lodge meetings, but it's only 45 minutes north of town. I should go more often.
Well, we'll be glad to have you.
And vice versa, I would say probably.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's lodges down here too. So
Yeah.
we all come. I've never been to a Goliad
There
state
sure are.
twice for the observance, but never been to a stated meeting. So
Well, it's
we'll
a little
put
bit
that
All
on.
further.
right.
It's a little bit more than a 45-minute drive for Goliad.
Teeny bit away. Although it's probably only about 50 minutes in the airplane. So I just need to
Yes,
find
and
it.
we have
There you go.
you just let me know when, and I can tell you whose pasture we can put you down in, because that's how we do it here in Goliad. But you can fly into Victoria, but we definitely have our pastures around here that people utilize.
Well,
We'll
as
probably
quiet
stick
as
for you.
as quiet as Goliad is, you can probably just land on Main Street.
Yeah, right. They move houses down Main Street. You can't land airplanes.
Oh, okay.
That's a fact. They just push up the wires and land and roll them through.
Oh wow.
Dennis, do you have? Who am I kidding? Will you please share your final thoughts with us?
You know, I really did appreciate, man, I really do appreciate you coming on, Justin. And you know, you are one of mine and JJ's favorite, and one of our best friends, but one of our favorite Masons, because you do the things that are required to be done, and you're smiling when you're doing it. You're not the begrudging past master. You're actually excited to help the fraternity, and that's how we feel. And that's why we're so happy that we get to spend time with you every time we come to Waco and whatnot. And I'd also like to put in a real quick plug. If you go to Waco and you take your family, I always take my family everywhere, and everybody knows that. But they had the best time at Justin's Pizzeria with the hidden doors and secret passages. You know, I just want people to know, when you go to Waco, you gotta go visit his pizzeria. That was one of my best experiences. It'll be one of our favorite memories of Waco.
Nice.
Now, with that being said, I'd also like to state the obvious. I push technology a lot. I think that it's what we need to help our engines run more smoothly. I think that we need to start focusing more on getting the lodges educated in that area if they're not already, and I'm working on things to help with that. But it starts with the decision of the lodge to do that. It started with the decision of the trustees to go to Grandview, and then it took someone that was dedicated to the vision to see it through and make it happen, like Justin. So we need our secretaries out there in our lodge, on our lodge platform, to, number one, make an email address for the lodge. It's the lodge's information, not your personal information. Make a lodge email address so that they always have that data and that information for the lodge. That should be saved for the lodge. Number two, utilize the Texas Masons app, and it's getting better, guys. That membership fee is minimal when you see what's fixing to come down the line with, and that's happening St. John's Day. That would be tomorrow, the day I was raised as a Master Mason, just so that you guys know. So I just wanted to throw that out there, and we're pushing technology in the Masonic Education and Services Committee, and we're not only pushing it, but we're utilizing it, we're working it, and you need to also to help your lodges, because we're way behind on that. The other thing is, like we always say, brothers, travel. We would have never known Justin if we didn't go to Grand Lodge, or we didn't travel to the events and sweat down in San Antonio together while the Grandmasters are going through the pomp and circumstance. And, you know, we're just sitting in the back of the crowd watching. Justin's always got his his Ray-Ban style glasses on. Actually, they're not even Ray-Ban style. They're the 90s, pink sides on the on those dark black shades. But anyways, brothers, we love you. Keep it between the points always. And thank you so much, Justin, for coming and visiting us tonight and doing this with us. I'm really grateful. And we're gonna do it again for sure. In live, I'm sure. We're gonna have to do it in person.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you ever decide you want to take that plane trip to Goliad and you want to co-pilot, I'll be glad to come. We'll record part 2 in the air.
Oh, that would. I've flown to a number of Masonic events, and that's one of the things I really enjoy. It combines my kind of passion for aviation and then the lodge, obviously. But yeah, we could record something. Yeah, we'll have to make that work.
Okay,
dude, we could definitely do that, but you'll have to come get me first, and then we'll go. We should do a sightseeing trip. Come down and get me, and then we'll just drive around to all the historical lodges and just talk about Freemasonry at the same time.
Yeah,
I'll help pay for the gas.
Yeah, you'll have to probably fit in the cargo hold or something, Dennis, but we'll probably make it happen.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. Well, Rat Worshipful, I definitely appreciate you taking time out of your day. This has been a terrific conversation. Dennis, I appreciate you taking time as well. You always provide a valuable insight into topics. So thank you both very much.
Thank
Thanks.
you, JJ.